cup of coffee, then I'll go. Thought that I'd just drop by and let you know that I'm leaving town tomorrow. I'll cause you no more sorrow. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go. I brought the money like the lawyer said to do. It won't replace all the heartaches I've caused you. It won't take the place of loving you, I know. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Actual coffee. So you've tuned into the channel Grand Colombia, and yet another going on 4 years, Coffee Time Live. And this mug was the original Coffee Time mug. I actually bought this in Ecuador, I don't know, 6 years ago. It's difficult to find anything but little teeny weeny shot glasses for mugs in Ecuador. And one day I was walking along, and lo and behold, an actual bowl with a handle. And that suits me. I have one coffee a day. It's a double shot espresso with some milk, steamed milk, and about almost a teaspoon of Hershey's chocolate. And I love it. Have that maybe 5 times a week. I got lots of stuff today. Quickly, starting off with a bang, as always, Yuka, thank you oh so much. I appreciate it, and you know that. And Mr. Anonymous, aka Jerry, just before this started, and I know it's you. Thank you. And what else we got? Let's see. We'll run through there's some interesting news today, including about Petro. Rob, good morning. How you doing? I have an update. I just can't seem to settle on a decision, and I say ciao too easily. John, how you doing? From sunny and tranquil, and we'll talk about the sunny part in a minute. But Ada, hope all is good. All is pretty fantastic. I got cleared to start walking again tomorrow, and I can't wait. I've been following her instructions to the letter, and everything she predicted is true. I even ordered on Mercado Libre a supplement I've never heard of. I still don't understand what the hell it is. She says order it up, take 2 a day, and it's some kind of immune system booster. And she's not a snake oil person, so all right, I'll give it a shot. It was $38 for this bottle. I was a bit in shock, but I went ahead and clicked the button. I got it. I've been taking them, and I have no idea if it's doing any good. I just know that with or without those, my energy just keeps improving. It's like, I forgot what normal felt like. Normal wasn't normal. Mike Jarvis, how you doing? Little bit jealous. What more can I say? Dennis, Paraguay. You know, I was just curious about Guyana. They've got a windfall going in the last couple years, and it looks like their cost of living is taken leaps and bounds increases. But it's an interesting country, and I was seriously thinking about visiting it. If you don't know, it's on the other border of Venezuela, and it would be a flight. And the downside is most of the country is kind of swampland, and it's pretty damn hot. But there's some areas where it's a little cooler. But I'm curious about it because of some historical things. But anyway, just, I get sidetracked. Tex Blue Jeans, good morning. How you doing? Mark, good last name. And you probably pronounce it low. I pronounce it Lao. Because, I mean, if it was Howe, it would be how, right? All right. Good morning from rainy Houston. Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of rain down here, and maybe it's bye-bye for a while. Jose, good morning from Armenia. How you doing? What are you doing here? You live here? You from here? Good morning from New York City. You're looking much better. New York City. I got a love-hate with it. And if I were there now, I'd be hating it. I was in New York City in the 70s. And it was a weekend. I mean, I've been there a number of times, but I went on this weekend and with a good friend of mine. And we parked outside of the city, and we took a subway or the train into the city and went to Manhattan. And there was a series of events that you couldn't come up with for a movie. It was crazy. We watched a cop get shot. I was accosted in a bar with a pistol. There was in Times Square. There were these. You got to remember, in the 70s, there were these pimps there, and this one come up to me, and he's got this black shirt, but he's got these panels of red, sparkly, I don't know what it was. And my friend's with me, and he's like this. You all interested in some sporting women? Like, what the hell? No, thank you. No, thank you. It was a crazy weekend. And then I returned to New York City after Giuliani had cleaned it up, and what a different place. That New York City was awesome. And I understand it's backsliding again. Paraguay borders Brazil. Right, yeah, I know where it is. It's actually right next to Guyana. Poor Bills died an early death. Yeah, it was pretty sad. It was, you didn't even recognize the team. It was one of those things that's like, where the hell did that come from? But, it was a good run. It's a good team. I'm happy because, I had to be a fan back when they would have 2 wins for the entire season. I had to be a fan when they were doing the scab games, the strike games, when, I was only one of maybe 4,000 people in the stands. I've been a fan for a long time. And being a fan of the Bills isn't just being a fan of the wins, although that's a pretty nice payoff. I'm pretty happy with this year. I'm just really puzzled. Something was bizarre. And I realized that they lost a lot of starting players. There was so many ups and downs for them. It's a wonder that they came through the season into the playoffs, but they did. And you kind of thought, well, maybe they'll keep going. But the other team was ready. The other team was well coached. The Bills were hapless. It's like they look like a high school team playing an all-pro team. It was, well, what are you doing in Mexico? So you're not living here anymore, or what? What's your deal? Roll out from Brussels. How you doing? Land of the global government. Jose, I recently moved from Orlando, Florida. You left Mickey in the peep shows. Yeah. Okay, so those are our comments to this point. I guess my voice still isn't back to 100%. Sam and Peg. Hey, Lauren, how you doing? Nice to see you back on here. Good to see you looking well. Yeah, feeling pretty great. All right, I'm going to cover some news items. Couple of them, a little discouraging. So let's get right to the discouragement. All right, here we've got the Minister of Labor announced a new plan to formalize nearly 600,000 private security workers. Now, what's the big deal, right? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they're going to standardize. In case you don't know, if you haven't been to Colombia, they do here what New York City has begun doing. Most businesses of any size or any amount of actual transactions, all the banks, they hire private security. And so if you go to the bank, you're going to see somebody there with a shotgun around his neck or something like that. And it's nothing to worry about. It's for your protection as well as the bank's protection. And private security is a huge thing. It's massive. There's more private security than there are police. The responsibilities for law enforcement is kind of divided. Like you got the transito that deal with nothing but the motorcycles and cars. And then you got the local police here, pickpockets, stuff like that. And then you got the national police who get more involved in larger umbrella investigations. And you can compare like national police, FBI, things like that. But they're uniformed. But the private security took hold in this country many years ago, back when the police were almost non-existent. And like in New York City now, you can't call a cop, so you have to do something if you're going to be in business. So you start hiring people with the guns. And so that's been going on here for a long time. And they're just really entrenched in the society. I know a number of people that their jobs are private security. Well, this deal here is a new plan to formalize. That word formalize really means central control. They're taking control of 1,600 private security businesses in Colombia, and they're going to start telling them when, where, how, and why to operate. Now, you could put up a front and say, well, we want to standardize procedures and da-da-da. That's bullcrap, because private security is one of the best functioning things in this country. There's no problem with it, so why would you mess with it? Why would you bring it under the government umbrella when it costs the government absolutely nothing? It costs the taxpayer absolutely nothing except what gets built into the price of, the services or goods that they're buying, which has been going on for so long, it's essentially invisible. So what's the point? Well, and no one's going to say this, but in my opinion, this is taking control of a huge security apparatus larger than the police by the government. Can't be for anything good. And if you just kind of pick certain scenarios in your brain, what if something occurred that the police didn't really want to go along with? Well, wouldn't it be nice if you're the government to have, this massive 600,000 security operatives that are now beholden to you for their pay because they want to institute certain guarantees on their pay. In other words, they're going to get involved and have some control over essentially people's lives when you start controlling their pay and whether they work or not. It's a pretty sick move. Now, it may be just my paranoia, but I'm not liking it. This is a move that you've seen in other countries that really gone in the wrong direction. Howdy from Austin, Texas. How you doing, Robert? I can't remember the last time I had coffee during coffee time. I had so much going on this morning. It's like, oh, I didn't take my pills and I didn't have my coffee yet. So I was scrambling about 5 minutes before we began, getting everything ready. Robert, doing great. Awesome. That's two of us. All right, next one. This is a bit of good news. Now, I've been told that this applies to airports throughout the country, but this anti-drug manual review for travelers at the El Aden, or the Armenia airport, was revoked. This means, well, what happened before? Now, I don't know because I haven't flown into Armenia in 20 years. But what I'm told by people that come here is they got in a line, that line took forever. And, you know, they ask questions and they check your bags. Well, this was a mandated manual security check for drugs, even in Armenia. But this is throughout the country. And it held people up. It could be, I go to the airport and I've waited for people for 2 hours that, you know, should have been out. And, you know, that's, what are you going to do? Well, this policy has been revoked. So that's a good thing. So if you experience delays coming through, well, they fiddle farted around with this kind of stuff, it's gone. Woo! And like I say, I've heard it's gone in other places also. All right, what do we got here? All right, here's another bit of, if you're paranoid, bad news. If you're not paranoid, it's no big deal. President Petro will assume control of regulating public services, lights, water, in Colombia. And under the Constitution, there is a loophole that, I'm sure this will be argued, but there's a loophole that appears would let him do this. Now, it's under certain conditions. Of course, you can say coming out of COVID, poverty is a real condition. I don't know. And his reason for doing this is he announced a couple weeks ago that public services would not only not have increases, but they would have decreases. Well, 9 of the public service companies increased. And he got pissed off, and so he has now assumed control. So the president personally is now in charge of all public services, be it gas, water, lights. Yeah, I guess I'm just a paranoid person. I don't think that's a great thing. Come on, there we go. Sticky button. What do we got here? Oops, just reminded me to take my pills. Yeah, it's like, well, at least I'm down to half as many as I had to take before. They keep shrinking. And it seems like the majority of what I'm taking, I really only take 3 medicines, soon to be 1. But I take a number of supplements now. All right. Turtle got in late. Turtle arrived at 8 p.m. last night in his big move to Bucaramanga. He got rid of the apartment. He hired a moving company to take all his stuff. His stuff was top notch. And I think he considered, I was wondering about this, and he considered the fact that they were very expensive items, and to replace them, it's going to take a lot of money. And you sell it, you're going to sell it for 50 cents on a dollar. And even then, you know, some people are going, oh, it's so much money. No, not if you price that stuff. It was a bargain. But, oh, YouTube. Bear with me. All right. I'm looking at this. My internet is running at 250 megabytes on fiber optic. I'm looking at my computer system. The CPU is running at 0.9%. I mean, it's barely working. And I've got green going out of my computer, yet I'm getting a message from YouTube that they're not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers may experience chopping. I don't know. Everything's great on this end. We had this problem a number of times. I have this set up now so I can just look at the screen. I've added some widgets. I can look at the screen and I know exactly what's happening on my end. So, what are you going to do? All right, let's move on. If you're getting a little choppiness, that's why. Nothing I can do about it. All right, where was I? Mike. Landing in Armenia last time, they had a special line for seniors. That's pretty awesome. They used to have that. And a lot of places have that. You may not notice it. For example, if you go in to pay your utility bills, if you're a senior, you can go to the front of the line, or very often they'll have a separate line. I usually don't bother because I'm not in a hurry. But one day I was really pressed for time and the line was outside running down the sidewalk. So I went on in and there was nobody in the seniors line. And I just stepped up, and I didn't even feel guilty that time because I was in such a hurry. When I left in April, Armenia, they scanned me out of all the passengers. A young Army guy exerting power over only foreigner on flight. Yeah, that'll happen. The big issue was actually flying in. That's where that other thing, as if you're going to be bringing drugs in the Army. I don't know. Well, I guess that happens. They come from drug areas and fly them in here. But all right, mine are just 2 blood pressure pills. I had to temporarily take a blood pressure pill because of my heart being compressed and not getting oxygen. But I don't have to take my blood pressure is good. My sugar is good. And I'll never get 100% oxygen, but I'm receiving enough oxygen where I could be back in Manizales and be fine with the altitude. Now in Cuenca, it's another story. It's just a little bit more. It's just 1,000 feet more. But the effects are exponential, and I can go back and visit Cuenca. I just can't be there for any real length of time. You get me past 3-4 weeks, and I'll flip into the danger zone. Turtle, congrats on his move. Yeah, you know what? You're going to find out how toasty it gets there, but he didn't really have any choice. And if you don't really have much choice, Armenia or Bucaramanga would have been the choices. Everything looks good for here. And he's a bit cosmopolitan, so Bucaramanga is probably more up his alley. All is good on video, no choppiness. That's awesome. Damn YouTube. They're probably just, now it's got stream status poor. But on mine, it's my CPU usage is up to 1%. Since you guys helped me out and I put this system together, this thing it's amazing. It just amazes me. And it's nice having a backup. Unless it happens like an hour before. But if this crashes or has a problem, give me a couple hours and life will go on. And I just take that, set it aside, and when I'm done, just, repair it or whatever it needs and go back in. It's so nice for me to have that. Just saw it. yet another anonymous. Thank you so much, whoever you are. What was it? Mrs. Murgatroyd? Mrs. McGillicuddy? What, wherever you are. Some of you get the vague, disjointed reference. We got, they're building a huge hospital here. Reminds me of Mass General in Boston. So happy to have nearby just in case. Yeah, it's nice. They're putting, it was planned a couple years ago, and particularly in Armenia or in Quindío and there, but in some other places in the country, they're doing some major medical upgrades, which is nice. Well, that was me. I don't know how it went through anonymous, because you have to put your name. You have to put you can put your name in. You can also type in a message. But thank you, I appreciate it. All right, what else we got? Breaking up. Not sick, just breaking up a little bit. Y'all want some sporting women? All right. Well, this is kind of interesting. Colombia is of note. It's one of the years with the most holidays in Colombia, but it's also one of the countries in the world with the most holidays for the year. And so I was kind of curious, and I pulled out the official holiday list for 2023, and I'm going, 14 of them are religious holidays. There's no surprise. 14 out of the 20. You know, so things like Independence Day, Battle of Boyacá, things like that, they're in there. But then you got 14 religious holidays. So, yeah, and it's one of the most in the entire world. It's like second or third or something like that. So if you guys think there's a lot of holidays, yeah, there's a lot of holidays. All right. So there's that. What else we got? We're going to talk a little bit about the rain. So first we had some rainy season. It wasn't real heavy, but we had some rainy season. Then La Nina kicked in, and the cooler weather and torrential downpours and awe-inspiring thunder. And I personally loved it. Now there's people here that, you know, hate it. They don't want to go out. They're wearing winter parkas, and, you know, it's like, oh, so it dropped to low 70s. Woo. But I loved it. Now, for the last 3+ months, I've been stuck here, and so I haven't been out in it. But we had that, and then it stepped into the natural, again, rainy part of the season, you know, beginning October, November. It bleeds into December. Sometimes it'll even bleed into January. And it's a good part of the year. It's been unusually raining, and pretty much thanks to La Nina. And even the rainy season, the last one, was heavier because you really had the effects of both. So I'd say about a week ago, you notice things starting to lighten up, things starting to go back to the way it usually is. And yesterday was the first day. It was actually, you could feel kind of warm out. I mean, it was beautiful. It was nice, but kind of warm. And when I say warm, I mean high 70s, low 80s. I'm not sure what, I didn't check, but you could feel it. And I actually had my fan off for the longest time in my bedroom. And last night I actually turned it on low, but I turned it on. And so the Armenia that we know and love, it looks like it's back. And now we're going into kind of a dry period. I mean, it's never dry, but you know, in comparison, a dry period. So, you know, I fully expect that we'll be back on track for the evening or nighttime rains. And it certainly is. I woke up this morning to a beautiful sunny day. It was 70, I did check, it was 72 degrees this morning. I don't know what it is now. I'm guessing it's supposed to go up to as high as 81 today, only for about an hour or two. So this is the typical Armenia. This is what you get most of the time with few exceptions. And even our rainy seasons, a lot of this, instead of just raining in the night, it could rain in the afternoon kind of thing. Or maybe we get a little bit more rain. It's not like the rainy season, it's raining day and night. Now with this La Nina, I mean, like I told you, I felt like I was in Manizales where it just rained whenever the hell it felt like it. That was it. Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are. Thank you. I knew there was other old fogies out there. Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are. Okay. So, the rain. I've been asked a number of times, how is it here? And I've responded, well, that's one nice thing about Armenia is we don't get the flooding and stuff like that. I think I gave a false impression to one person, which means maybe to some others. Absolutely true. We don't really get that here. However, in Condillo, there's been some issues. And let me put this up. The rain, okay, this was 2 days ago. And the article talks about how during the last week, the rains have decreased in Condillo. However, 4 municipalities remain on yellow alert due to the risk of landslides in their territory. They've been on this yellow alert, and I think Salento was in the higher one, which it may be red, I'm not positive, but in the highest tier. So there's 4 municipalities that have issues when the rain gets kind of crazy. And those 4 are Salento, Circasia, Calarca, and Cordoba. So Cordoba is just south of Calarca. Circasia is just north of Armenia. And Salento is a bit more north and over to the right of Armenia. So it's so when I say we don't have a problem here, I really meant to, I think I said in Armenia, but if I didn't, that's what I was talking about. Because I'm pretty sure I said one of the reasons I love Armenia is we don't have to deal with these issues, and we haven't. Now, there are a couple barrios in the south that have some minor flooding, but it doesn't really have a whole lot of effect because, those, you don't live where you know it's going to flood twice a year, kind of thing. The effect on these other places, primarily the roads. These roads are carved into the side of cliffs. And it's pretty impossible to keep some of that mountain from dropping in the road when you have, constant water flow. And so that's pretty much what they contend with. So there's that. How are we doing on time? Wow. A few minutes over, but on time. And so now, thank you, YouTube. We're back to excellent connection. I wonder how anybody was affected with it. Huh. They had me on error for almost a half an hour. Okay. Coffee's getting cold. Do we have any questions? I did mention that I'm cleared to start walking again. My feet have reduced enough, and I've lost enough water in my legs and feet so that she was concerned about, and I didn't quite understand. She doesn't speak any English, and so it's all in Spanish, and I do pretty well, but sometimes when she gets into something technical, I don't understand it. And she gave me a technical explanation, of essentially why I could cause damage, permanent damage to my feet if I went out walking in the condition they were in. I have no clue, honestly. And that's the best I got out of it. But I take her at her word. It was bad enough they looked so freakish as it was. They look almost normal. The top of my feet got kind of a swelling. But the weird thing is the aftermath. Ask me a question so we can get off this topic here. Because the part I'm going to tell you now is pretty disgusting. The aftermath of this is below my knee about 6 inches. All the way down, you have this gradient of reddish color. And as it gets down around my ankles and into my feet, my skin looks like a 100-year-old turtle. No offense. Well, alligator. Alligator. It's scaly. It's got crinkles. They look like plates. And you run your hand on it, and you got to be careful you don't cut your hand. I mean, it's really disgusting. And so I'm not too sure about that. I have a hunch that discoloration will never go away, but it doesn't really matter. You know, kind of looks like a bit of a sunburn, I guess, but it's pretty freaky. Hey, that's my blood, man. Yeah, okay. Well, I said sorry. We changed it to alligator. Any other questions? So anyway, when I go out Monday, maybe because I didn't make it official.
It's asking your questions. Remember, 4 question marks first, then ask the question.
There, now it's official. So when I go out Monday, I'm going to video something. So we'll go back to not just live videos, hopefully. And I don't know how it's going to be. I haven't actually walked outside around the house in months, so I'm a little freaked out by that. Am I going to fall on my face or what? Okay, do you think Petro's takeover of the utilities is permanent or just a power grab to show the utility companies he can use such power? I'm not so sure he's trying to show the utility companies. I think it's a wider message. Is it permanent? I think it's intended to be temporary based on what's in the law, that loophole. It's intended to be temporary, but they may try to make some moves. Typically what happens when governments are trying to socialize is they'll make a move like this. And in the beginning, they'll do things that appear to be pretty good. Like maybe he'll reduce some prices and then put out a PR campaign about how effective it is now that the government's involved, everything's more efficient. And those greedy big light and big gas and big whatever companies and and thankfully he stepped in. You get those PR campaigns. And that covers up the fact that it's a governmental power grab, which gives the government just that much more power. Let's assume the worst. Let's say that a government of XYZ country wanted to just take over, do a coup and take over. What if you could mobilize the largest police force in the country? And what if you could turn off all the power and lights and gas everywhere in the country? I'm not sure if internet is included in this. I believe it's not. But if you make this step, maybe that's a possibility. You exert a certain level of control over people that you wouldn't have had normally, and it just makes things like that easier. And again, maybe I'm paranoid, but you've seen this before in other places. I don't think we're there, and I don't mean to, put a scare into you, but these are the kind of moves that set the stage for those things down the road. So, his intentions, well, if you look at the surface of it, maybe his intentions are just but this is the part that galls me. You know, he said that there would be no increases, possibly decreases, and 9 of them had the nerve to increase. Well, maybe they needed to increase to continue operating. I mean, did anybody think of that? I mean, this bonehead, I don't trust anything he said after his thing a week ago when he told the nonprofit to stop buying all the food for children that they distribute to free to the poor because it comes from outside of Colombia and there's such a big markup on it, and it would be better if they bought it internally. And they had to come back and say, every bit of what we use is manufactured in Colombia. None of it is imported. Well, you know, so I don't have a lot of faith in what he comes up with. Turtle, the red below your knees is dried pooled blood. Well, that's disgusting. Okay. If they do something he doesn't approve of. Yeah, it's a possibility. I don't think, if somebody's looking for power and control, I don't think they're just narrowly looking at those companies. I think it's for broader purposes. And what better way to control, you know, broader purposes than control the private police forces and the private utilities? Those things you can command and have a massive effect through the entire country like that. Yeah, Mr. Paranoid here. It's anything like when the USA government gets involved, it turns into an absolute mess. Yep. Every government-run agency is way too bloated, has no efficiency whatsoever. Right, because when it's private, it's like with these private security. You have the company and you have the employees. There's no middleman. Therefore, the costs and expenses and income, it's all there. And they can micromanage however they want. And if employees don't like it, they can quit. And then they say, oh, crap, you know, we need employees. We got a bad reputation. We better start paying more. You know, those things take place. And in talking to the couple people I know that work as security, they're very happy with their job, except both of them say the hours are too long. But on the other hand, they're getting paid for those hours. So they like that part of it. But when you step in and you have a government involved, now you've got oversight and you have committees and you've got other mechanisms that cost money that get inserted to that system. And so they become inefficient. There's just no purpose for it. There we go. Our utilities are up about 40%. Not a problem for me, but it's got to be tough on some of our neighbors. That's true. And you could give the impression that, you know, he's trying to control this inflation. The problem with, you know, if nobody understood the economics, all they have to do is look back at Nixon when he put caps and controls on industry in the United States. Because, you know, we had inflation, it was running away, and if you remember, you know the story. And it was a miserable failure. It had the exact opposite effect. It was a disaster. And from that point on, it's been kind of known that you just don't do that. And in the U.S., you don't really see that much anymore. I mean, Bernie, you know, he's kind of prone for that, but he never got elected, so maybe that tells you something about that. So it's a non-effective, inefficient way, and it sounds good to say, well, I'm going to cap those airline tickets at $200. But if the end result is you can't fly, or a place goes bankrupt, or, you know, all these negative outcomes, it just doesn't work. And then you've got in the other direction where insurance companies used to be private, and then the government got involved in insurance companies, and you have all these these middlemen that do approvals for services and things like that. And all it did was drive insurance prices sky high. It just let the experts do what they do. It doesn't mean you don't. You can have oversight, but you don't have to interfere. I mean, when did a government bureaucrat become more wise than somebody that's worked 30 years in a field? Yet he's going to make the decision for the guy who, so I don't know if you've ever been in the situation. I have, where you just kind of slap your forehead and go, what the hell are they thinking? Okay, it's a way for him to implement some money for the government down the road. That's always part of it, because certain fees somehow get involved. His future plans for the country, he's way short on cash. Yeah, one of the beauties, I've talked about this before, in Colombia, is that there's so little tax. You have the IVA, the sales tax, but there's very few people in this country that actually pay an income tax. You really have to be a pretty high up there. It's something around 10% of the people, or it's less, that actually pay an income tax. And the government has done some expansion of services where they help contribute to the child nutrition. They've taken some of the, not contributions, but agreement with the private hospitals, for example, in the system that they created. So that money went into a pool, and with that pool, they were able to create clinics for people, basically the poor, that couldn't afford insurance. So the system, without the government administrating the health system, it remains private. But they created a hybrid system where the government was able to take those funds that they could not use for anything else and put it into healthcare for everyone who couldn't afford it. So in Colombia, everyone has access to healthcare. It may not be, you may wait in lines, but it's free. And if you don't like it, get a better job or get a job, and you get your healthcare paid for you by the employer. Beauty in Colombia now is the president only in office 4 years. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I don't think there'll be any acclamation like with Uribe. Not acclamation. Whatever. Yeah, so there's a built-in limitation, fortunately. I'm honestly, I'm not that concerned with it ultimately. My biggest concern is what negative effects will be produced out of it during that time. And what will everything get reversed, or will some things remain in place? Those are the problems, because, okay, you can go into this saying, okay, I know I can't do this. However, I could set the stage, and maybe the next guy will be in my same situation, and then maybe he can build on that. That's where the danger comes in. And hopefully you've got strong enough and hopefully win next time around that we'll be able to actually, reduce some of these things. But if you're in power, if you're in government on a national level in any country, power is pretty seductive. And if you're sitting there looking at, I have essentially control over 600,000 armed men, do I really want to give that up? I think for most men that have their egos and desire a certain level of power, maybe you don't want to give that up so easily. It's a question. Yep, saw that. Okay. Well, we're getting towards the end. Got any other questions? I apologize that this was full of conspiracy theories and paranoia and negativity, but I try to tell you what's going on. I held off. There just wasn't anything really happening with the guy because people want to say, was there anything good? Is there anything bad? Well, it's not like there's been this steady drumbeat, but there are these things, and there's been like the one with I don't know if I'll ever get over. I still want to just laugh when the food issue. No, you can't buy that because it's all imported, and it's. Oh, he was just formally, officially, face to face, congratulated by Putin for not taking a stand on Ukraine. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, the way that thing is going, it seems like this has been played for a long time. It really seems like this wasn't just some happening with reactions to it. It seems like this was laid out a long time ago. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. And, when they say follow the money, you look at the money, well, the people cashing in on this, Raytheon and all these military operations, it's like Trump came in and he stops all this war. You got to keep feeding the machine. And so, okay, the U.S. doesn't want to go to war, but what if we have a proxy war? How could we do that? Where's the most likely? And maybe if we just keep poking the bear, he'll react, and then we can, look like the good guys and step in. Again, maybe this is just conspiracy theory, but it's certainly playing out like that because all of these escalations that were supposed to be in promises in the beginning, no, we'll never be personally involved. No, we'll never do things like tanks. We're just going to support them with basic medical and food and some small arms. And, what happened to that? And it's not just basic stuff. I mean, it seems like every other week they're throwing another $50 billion out the door. That's kind of hard to take when you're sitting in a country that's your money and you can't, you're struggling to pay for a full tank of gas. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. It's like maybe your priorities are just a little bit off. So, I'm not, Russia should not have done what they did, but, I studied World War II a lot, and I lived in Japan for 3 years, and I got, some of their perspective on it. And historically, what the Japanese did at Pearl Harbor was actually, in a way, and they were the bad guys. There's no doubt about it. And what they had already done in China. So I'm not saying there weren't good reasons for what happened with the embargo that the United States put on Japan. But they had put such pressure on them that they had to do something. And so, that's why you had the famous quote, I'll go and we'll take out Pearl Harbor and it'll be a great victory. On the other hand, we've awoken a sleeping giant, was it? They knew that they were cutting their own throat. On the other hand, what it was doing, it was destroying Japan and put them in a box. And it was known that they were being put in a box. So, because back in that day, if you read the contemporary literature, it was expected that Japan was going to declare war on the United States. It was more of a matter of when. It's because there was so much pressure being put on them that at some point it was likely to explode. Now, if you don't want that to happen, maybe you do other things. But if you recall, there was all this need to bring the United States into the war for Europe. Well, something like, Pearl Harbor, okay, we got a war against Japan, and at the same time, we declare war on Europe. So, there's a lot of gameplay behind the scenes on these sorts of things. And I'm not saying good or bad, or, I would hate to have the United States, divided between Japan and Germany, today. So there was definitely evil going on, but events don't always just happen. A lot of times they're orchestrated. Okay, I'm preaching, aren't I? What do we got here? Is it even possible to be too paranoid about the government? Excellent point. That's real good. How much does 41 Abrams tanks say? Yeah, that's one has insane firepower. If you know anything about tanks, there's a reason that one's king of the hill. Hi, came in late. We'll enjoy playback. Hope you're well. Doing awesome, thanks. Abram tanks cost $6.2 million, estimated in 2016. That's an old figure. They're considerably more. From what I believe, it's more than double, because they just went through a major upgrade that was really expensive, plus that new dollar marks. Now, they're probably getting some that weren't retrofitted, because I don't know at what point. It takes a period of time. They don't just retrofit them all overnight. And so maybe they're getting some of the old ones that haven't been done yet. I don't know about that. But I do know that they were going to go to a new tank, and because they couldn't come to a decision on that, they decided to upgrade and retrofit. 250 million then. Let's see. Europe has no hope but U.S. military against Russia's aggression. I agree. On the other hand, there are other ways to defeat that aggression than by creating a war. Just my opinion. Once a war begins, then what are you going to do? Russia won't back down. And if anything, they might try to expand. But if you think about it, their military has really been exposed. They were supposed to be like the number 2 power in the world militarily. They were supposed to be this massive juggernaut. And they've been exposed to being a paper tiger. Their troops are alcoholics that desert. This isn't just played up. There's some Russian information out there that we'll talk about that. So I don't know. I notice interest rates on saving accounts in Colombia are really good at the moment. Not unusual. My partner is getting over 14% with Bank Colombia. Could be a good place for retirement savings. I can't disagree with that. Ecuador, when I was there, had really good. It was common to have 10%, and it would be even more sometimes. Problem in Ecuador is they've got a history of bank failures and the people involved in the bank disappearing off into some country with no extradition with bags of money. And that was a routine scandal. When I moved there in 2015, there had just been one that encompassed a couple of the what do you call them? Savings unions. I forget what you call them, like co-ops, and a couple banks. I'm glad you're better. Heard the Mexican peso came down. Does that mean also in Colombia? I haven't looked today. It did drop to around 45.70 about 2 days ago. You're always going to get that. You're going to get fluctuations. There's right now there's no trend or pattern. It's not like you can look at it and say, "Oh my God, it's on a free fall. I better do something quick." There's no way to know that. At least right now, there's no way to know that. And there were people that were saying that before, it spiked up almost to 5,000. And then, boom, it dropped down. I don't remember. I think it dropped down to like 42, 44. And people were like on Facebook and, you know, all the gringo experts were there. And they're, yeah, we're going to fall. We're going to drop to 3,000, da, 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 da. And then what did it do? It went back up and actually broke for the first time 5,000. You know, it's predicting these things with the way things are now is kind of a fool's game. All right, we've hit the hour mark. I'll give you a last call if you have any actual question. You don't have to do it for filler, but if there's an actual question, I'll address it, and then we'll sign off for the day. I don't get to go watch a Bills game. I do have a Skype call at 3 o'clock, so I have to remember that. Last call? Going. And it's Colombia, not Columbia. That's a touchy subject here. Okay, I guess we're done for the day. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. There's contributors, not just the ones today, but there's other ways. I have some monthly contributors. I thank you so much for that. I acknowledge those every so often, individually. Almost all the people that contribute aren't really thrilled about having more than their first name out there, so I try to be careful with that. But I thank you so much for that, and it's going to come in handy soon because when I get back out on the road, when I get back out on the road where I can actually live life again, I'll be using this for some pretty cool things. At least that's the hope. All right, so that's it. See you next week. Ciao.
Wow.